is 5:30 and I'm calling this meeting to order. First, a reminder that meetings of the Select Board are meetings conducted in public. They are not meetings of the public. Nonetheless, members of the public shall be afforded reasonable opportunities to express opinions about matters conducted by the Select Board, so long as order is maintained. The rules for public comment are: at the conclusion of a Select Board discussion on an agenda item, but before any action is taken, there may be 10 minutes afforded to public comment. Comments made by the public must be addressed to the chair, to the Select Board as a whole, and not to any individual members of the Select Board or members of the public. Members of the public must be acknowledged by the chair before speaking. If a member of the public has already spoken on a topic, they shall not be recognized again until others have first been given the opportunity to comment. Order and decorum shall be maintained throughout the meeting. Personal, impertinent, threatening, or profane remarks will not be tolerated. For those who are participating via Zoom, please note that chat is not an appropriate avenue for public comment. All public comments must be made verbally when acknowledged by the chair. Please silence all cell phones, and a reminder that all of this meeting is being recorded and may appear on the internet. So first, do we have any adjustments to the agenda?
I have none.
Okay, I just want to make one, which is public comments on items not on the agenda, because we usually do have that. Any other ones? Anybody have anything? Okay, then moving on to public comments on items not on the agenda. Are there any public comments online on items not on the agenda? Any comments in the room? Anyone on the Select Board? Okay, so disposed of that. Select Board items for discussion and action: the Putney Fire Department review, discussion, and recommendation for PFD operations analysis. Before we begin this, we do have some members that have had either current or past history with the fire department, and I feel like that should be disclosed.
I was a volunteer for a minute.
Okay,
I was as well 3 years ago.
3 years ago. Okay. Does anybody feel like they're have any conflicts of interest there?
I don't believe I do.
Okay.
Nope.
Okay. All right, moving on. So we have two vendors, right? Online here?
Two companies.
Two companies, and they both have PowerPoints?
They do.
Okay. Do we want to flip a coin? Decide who goes first?
So, AP Triton is Kurt, and
Okay.
Jason DeCramer is Mission CIT.
Okay.
So if you want to start with AP Triton.
Sure. Start with the first letter in the alphabet.
Right.
Okay.
Kurt, if you want to go ahead and introduce your team, that way the Select Board and the room know. And then I can also share my screen so you can do your PowerPoint.
Yeah, that's great. I have the team embedded in the PowerPoint, and due to holidays and vacations, I'm the only one going to be on the presentation with you.
Okay. Yeah, it is 4th of July holiday week, isn't it?
I've got some of the team actually on site on a project.
Oh, okay. So Galen, you're gonna have to help me here.
You should be able to share other participants
If
or
I,
make them a co-host.
I think
oh,
it's-
wait a minute, I have to go to Kurt's name. All right, I'm gonna make you a co-host, Kurt.
Okay.
All right, you should have control, my friend.
Let me try again. There we go. All right, hopefully you can see my intro slide, and I'll get you right into the slideshow right now. And I will, hang on. I usually go through this pretty quick because we like to leave a lot of time for questions and answers. Obviously, this is our opportunity, and thank you very much for this opportunity to discuss our proposal for your operations analysis for the town. We have a wide range of experience in fire service, numerous studies. We match our associate skills and expertise to each client's specific needs. And we've done in excess of 90 different fire district studies, municipal governments, fire agencies, public and private. The team that I'm going to introduce you to has been specifically selected for your project. I'll highlight some of their skills in a minute. A majority of the team has been working on our projects in Vermont already. We take pride in contracting with only the most skilled. They go through a very rigorous vetting process. Not only do we have access to the folks that are assigned to your project, but we have an extensive bench that in the event we need to pull any additional team members up from the bench, we will do that as extra value at no extra cost. We do believe, I mean, obviously we believe we're well suited for your project, or would not have submitted a proposal. I've asked that Rich Buchanan be the project manager for your study. Of the 3 projects in Vermont, Rich is leading 2 of them. Williston was mine, Stowe is his, and Brattleboro is his. Mike Cahill, retired fire chief, extensive experience in municipal fire service as well as facilities, staffing, and other expertise. Melissa Vasquez-Swank. Melissa is the director of project support, actually taking over some of my duties when I moved into the vice president emeritus position. Don Stouffer, another skilled individual. John has been a team member on every one of our Vermont projects. Tom Schneider. Tom was on Brattleboro. Tom actually has a degree in finance, and that was his role in Brattleboro. Michelle Crowley was with me on Williston. Michelle is the subject matter expert in the area of community risk assigned to your project. Paul Morgan is our GIS and data analyst. Paul has an extensive background working with all of the platforms that we utilize in our analytics. And then Lori Cantus is our project support person on the project. Lori will make sure we stay on task with our formatting and proofing and getting it ready for the final review. Our approach is pretty well laid out and very well vetted on all of our projects. We kick it off with a virtual team meeting with our team and with the fire department and the town's team. This is where we get to know each other. This is where we make sure we have a clear understanding of expectations. And the team members get to meet their counterparts on the city team, on the town team, and on the Triton team. We do use a Dropbox function for collection of data and information. We have several tables that are customized for every one of our projects in an attempt to make it a little easier on staff in the data collection process. We obtain and analyze the information and begin developing portions of the report as the team members identify that the data is complete. Scheduling of on-site views, we're big on stakeholder, internal and external. On this particular project, in addition to our virtual meetings, in addition to any virtual one-on-ones that may be necessary, we will have 2 members on site for 2 full days doing the internal stakeholders, the external stakeholders. We usually work with the team, with the town's team, to identify key stakeholders throughout your community. Obviously, those key stakeholders internal to the organization are your firefighters, the folks that make the department work, as well as the elected officials and others. We believe that regular communication throughout the process is the key to our success in all of our studies, along with technical reviews of the report, which I'll talk about in a minute. We anticipate your key stakeholders having ample opportunity for input and discussion. Rich is very big on reaching out to many people as he starts to develop, even after he leaves the site, as he starts to develop the sections. Once the draft report is ready, we will submit it to your team for a final technical review. We want to make sure that we have the numbers accurate, that we have the apparatus identifiers correct, and it also gives you an opportunity to take a look at where the project is headed. Final presentation as in our proposal to the key stakeholders and others as deemed necessary. And we have projected within your project an on-site presentation. This is our understanding. It's right out of our proposal. There's no magic here. We do these types of, we have a lot of success with these types of studies. In addition to the 3 I'm going to show you as our references, I could give you many, many more. Recommendations would be according for future staffing and service delivery needs within the RFP. So here's the basic scope of work. It's right out of the RFP: project initiation, baseline organizational assessments, all the components and more that were in your RFP, recommendations and strategies. The recommendations are formatted in a short, medium, and long format, which is basically 1 to 3, 3 to 5, 5 and beyond. Wherever we can, we also pride ourselves on working with our finance SME and your staff. If we have a recommendation that looks like it's going to have a fiscal impact, we make every attempt to project that fiscal impact within the recommendation. So we're going to analyze your risk, your growth. We will be talking with your planning department and other key areas, other key department heads. And we'll take a look, as we have in the other ones, such as Williston, the impact on your emergency service planning that your current growth and your future growth and your current risks have. There is an optional deep dive on community risk assessment. We did hit the key points within our proposal on the risk pieces out of your RFP. We're also providing with an option for a Center for Public Safety Excellence 6th edition compliant full community risk assessment, which is a very, very deep dive on your risk. And it's more than just the known risks. We also take a look at what's going on with your community as far as community development, as far as your revenue streams and the potential impacts on revenue streams, job creation, etc., that an incident may have. Examples, you've heard me reference these already. Williston, I was the team lead on Williston. Brattleboro Fire Department, that was an EMS and operations analysis that Rich led, and Stowe, Rich just came back from Stowe's on-site. He gave me a briefing just last week. It sounds like that's moving along quite nicely. That's all I have, as I promised. Keep it short, leave enough time for interaction.
So Q&A.
Okay, so does the select board have any questions?
I have a question.
Go ahead.
Hi there, Kurt. My question is, in your experience, what sets Vermont apart from other places? Why should we care that you have experience in Vermont?
Well, what we have noticed for most of our Vermont projects are the size of the communities and the interaction within the community. Also, the age of the community. So as an example, with almost every town in Vermont that we've worked in, there's a lot of history, and we believe that's important, bringing that forward as we do the analysis, particularly when we're looking at risk structures, etc. We've also, and we see this on a lot of our projects, particularly when we're doing smaller communities, the engagement of the community within the study process is always very refreshing. Many community members do want to be engaged, and once we start the interview process, they seem very pleased that they've been reached out to. The other dynamic with most of our Vermont studies is certainly the makeup of the different service delivery models. So as an example, in your case, utilizing paid call reserves, paid call firefighters versus having career folks. So I think it's important to note that almost everybody on the team started as a volunteer and or was a fire chief of an all-volunteer organization. So we bring that sensitivity. Personally, I was very involved with the International Chiefs Volunteer Combination Officer section as we were doing their strategic planning and doing analysis on the transitions that agencies were going through. So hopefully that answered your question.
Yeah, thank you.
Just as a follow-up, so I know Brattleboro is a paid staff department. How about Stowe or Williston?
So Williston was a small contingent of paid. When I did that study, there were some very interesting dynamics going on in Williston because they also transport. Whereas the risk they were faced with and the future development they were faced with had already outpaced that organization. So as a result, one of the many recommendations was to start a transition to balance out their pay with more volunteers. And in that case, I believe within 6 months of the study, they added some paid personnel. That does not necessarily mean that is the core of every study that we do. But I do believe it's important as we meet with the volunteers and we look at your data analysis and your statistics that we do pay attention, because we already know we're in competition. Our volunteers and 2 of your members of the select board, we're volunteers. We compete for family. We compete for church. We compete for youth sports. We compete with dual income households. So being sensitive to those dynamics, we believe, is extremely important.
Okay, thanks. Other questions?
Stowe's an interesting analysis. When I met with the town manager as we were bidding that project, as you may or may not know, Stowe's fire program is separate from their EMS program. So they're moving through some challenges right now to try to maximize resources.
Okay. Thank you. Are there other questions among the board before I move it to the public? Karen?
So I have one question. Kurt, I'm looking at your proposal on page 8. Task 3B, operational and general recommendations. It states here, Triton may identify additional areas and programs that may warrant attention and improvement. Can you elaborate on that, maybe with a couple examples?
This happens all the time, so let me try to narrow it down. Sometimes as we're doing some of the analytics, we need to do just a little bit deeper dive, let's say in the area of revenue generation, which is not unusual in this day and age.
Right.
So in that particular case, we would green light our finance person to work closer with your finance person to get a better picture of those revenues. I was doing a project up in Oregon, and the information they gave us led the section to be written in such a way that it wasn't clear as to how they booked their debt. So as a result of that, we did a much more deeper dive. Another set of analytics that ended up in a deeper dive is as we were looking at station locations in some of the areas, we did some more work within the future station locations. Where is the development going? American Canyon Fire Protection District, once we started interacting with their planning department, we found out that they had quite a bit of future development planned to the west end of the district that had not really been brought forward. So we did additional work in those areas. And that's just a couple of examples I will share with you. And those were done at no cost. I will share with you almost every project that we've done, because of the relationship we develop and the dynamics of the team that we bring to the table. We almost always pull the leaves back just a little bit more and go, oh, okay, we'd like to take another look at this if it's okay with you.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Okay, thanks. Any other questions among the board? Mr. Fairman? Mr. Fairman? Your hand?
Yes,
Oh, there you go.
sorry. Thank you, Madam Chair. Because the gentleman who's speaking online and I have not met, I should mention that I have both been a consultant and engaged consultants regarding head offices of large corporations, where terms of reference are the keystone of a consulting assignment. And I know you're in the midst of discussion here, so I'm simply going to ask the gentleman from his perspective, what specific result is he contracting to provide?
Oh, that's a great question. We are contracted to provide findings and recommendations based on the analytics based on the key areas in the RFP and based on the areas that we've expanded upon in our proposal. We come into every project with no predetermined outcomes. We rely on our analytics, we rely on the data analysis, the national standards to help form the findings and the recommendations. So in essence, we come in with a clear slate.
Madam Chair, may I ask a supplemental question?
Yes, go ahead.
Thank you, sir. Going into this in a bit more detail, specifically, what can we expect to read in your final report? You've mentioned analytics, for example. Now, analytics is a very general term, so I would like to know what specific questions you plan to answer in your final report.
Well, the expectations of the RFP are fairly well laid out. And yes, analytics is a very generalized term. So what you will see in our report, and by the way, we ask that all of our subject matter experts and the faces that you saw in our PowerPoint, that is your team. That's not a shell. Those people will be working on your project. They'll have handprints on it. So you will see analytics relative to response times. We will take a look at the performance of the computer-aided dispatch system. We will look at turnout times. We will look at response times. We will do extensive computer modeling in the analytics area. So as we move forward, answering the questions that are in the RFP and addressing the current state, if you will, of the service delivery system and the potential future impacts that development, change of generations, etc., may have on that system, and also customer expectations. So you will see those items be brought. You will see sections written in every one of the categories that's in our proposal, and they will all be well vetted out as they move into the technical review draft.
Madam Chair, those are excellent answers. I have just one final question, if I may.
Okay, go ahead.
Sir, you referred to customer expectations. Who are the customers?
Well, it's interesting because our approach are internal customers and external customers. So for the fire department, their customers are others within the city. I've always felt that fire departments are extremely important balance to any community internally. And then externally, our customers are the folks within the community, the folks that live in the community, the folks that visit the community, the folks that drive through your community on the way to other communities. And then as we look at the lay of the land, the customers that you serve with automatic and mutual aid and vice versa.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you.
So there's, are there any other questions online? Questions in the room, Heather?
I just have a question for the presenter. A lot of what you have said really resonates as an ISO rating data. How is this different than just the same thing as getting an ISO rating?
Well, I've been through those and it differs quite a bit. ISO depends on you filling out a bunch of schedules and they come in and interview you. ISO is dependent upon their 2.5 mile circles, their 5 mile circles, etc. This study goes beyond that. Yeah, do we model travel times? Absolutely, we model travel times. But I'll give you an example of a project I did where part of the component of the risk was station location analysis. And had I done just purely ISO, it would have left out a very high-risk multifamily area community within that organization's footprint. So we're a much deeper dive. Now, I will share with you, we will pull data from ISO. There's one piece of data that they have that they don't share in your report, and that is the fire flow batch data, where we take a look at the fire flow batch data and take a look at the fire flow requirements for each of those buildings that are within the community, and that helps us match risk to deployment.
May I just ask, for those of us who don't have experience in the fire department, what ISO is?
Chief, do you want to answer that, or do you want me to?
No, go ahead.
So ISO is a rating service that several of the insurance companies utilize as they set your rates. Particularly the rates for your small and medium-sized businesses. The larger businesses are pretty much self-insured. There's a direct correlation between your rating and how the underwriters set those rates. ISO looks at multiple components, actually several, if not all the components we're going to be looking at. They also look at the city's water system. The city's water system is actually a big component of the rating. On the fire side, it's your training records, it's your staffing patterns, it's your automatic aid, it's your apparatus. So we will definitely look at your most recent ISO report. However, we will not use that as our foundation.
Okay, what does it stand for?
Insurance Services Office.
Okay, thank you. Are there more comments on the select board? Questions on the select board? For AP Triton? Chief, did you have any questions or anything? Okay. Any other questions online? Comments online? Any other comments in the room? All right, should we move on to, what are they, missions?
Mission CIP.
Mission CIT.
And that's Jason. Jason, I'm gonna make you co-host.
Actually, Kim, if you could make Frank Edwards, he would be the team leader on the project, so he's gonna go through the PowerPoint.
Okay, Frank, you're on.
You see that okay?
Not yet.
No. Let me make sure I did, oh no, you are a co-host on my end. Hold on, let me just try one.
Do you have more than one screen? Oh,
There we
something's
go.
happening, okay.
Oh,
Whoops, uh-oh.
what just happened? Woo! All right, woo! I freaked out for a minute.
Okay, now we can see it.
You have it? Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm gonna have you.
Select board members, Ms. Manager. My name is Frank Edwards. I work for Mission CIT. I will be your project leader for this project. We'll go through our short presentation and again, answer any questions you might have after that. Who we are. We started in 2019. Dr. DeKremer started a company called Strategic Fire Services Consulting that provided consulting services to small, medium-sized, volunteer combination and career departments. In 2021, that company merged with Mission CIT. Mission CIT became the overarching name of the company, and we added other service areas including fire and EMS training, testing. We do promotional testing as well across the country. What we provide is, in this instance, consulting services. We do strategic plans, master plans, organizational assessments. We do recruitment and retention studies for organizations, fire and EMS organizations. Again, we also do promotional testing, and we do grant writing for organizations through the Assistance to Firefighter Grant Program or other grant opportunities. And we also do fire and EMS training and testing for organizations, primarily smaller volunteer combination organizations. Why we're different than everybody else, again, all the companies that submitted bids to you guys are good companies. AP Triton is a good company, so again, everybody's got reasons for why they're different. For us, one, we think it's the quality and the experience level of our consultants. Our folks are people who've done it real world. They didn't just, they're not academics. They were, and again, I'll talk about it when I go through the team that'll be on this project. But, you know, I'm a retired fire chief. I've led volunteer and combination organizations. I was able to submit and win a $900,000 fire grant for volunteer recruitment and retention in the last place I worked. So again, all of our consultants have real world experience, and in this case, one of them in particular has very specific subject matter experts on volunteer recruitment and retention. We have a huge passion for helping organizations, fire and EMS organizations, to make a difference in their community, but to get better and to improve. We want to build a partnership with you, not just have you as a client. You know, we may use that term, but really we want a partnership with you to collectively work through and come up with a proposal that benefits you, that's tailored to you, and that helps you in the long run. And again, we don't want this to end once the final report has been submitted to you. If you have questions, you need anything beyond the final report, we're here. We want to answer questions. We want to help you. One of the last studies I did in Telluride, I've communicated with the chief probably 6, 8, 10 times since that final report was done, checking in, seeing how things are going. He's asked me some questions about some grant things. So again, we want to continue that relationship once we're done. And we don't use a cookie cutter approach. Some companies have surveys that they send you to fill out for all your data and information. We don't have that. We have approach for every jurisdiction. We come in and we look at how you are, and we tailor our information and data collection needs to your organization and your system. We have expertise in recruitment and retention for the volunteer fire service in particular. We work primarily with volunteer and combination departments. That's typically where our bread and butter is, in those organizations. We feel like we're best suited for working with them. And our proximity to this project would allow for additional on-site visits if we need to. The company is centered in Connecticut. Jason, who's on the project, is one of the owners. He's in Connecticut. I live in North Carolina. The other person who's on the project also lives in North Carolina. But again, we can easily get there and help you through things and provide information to you at meetings. These are some of our previous consulting projects. Again, from your last meeting, I know you were concerned about Vermont experience. We do not have specific Vermont experience, but we are heavy in New England experience. And again, we don't have a lot of depth because we are fairly new, but I think, again, we provide good quality and quality results with the projects that we are engaged in or have engaged in. Currently, we're engaged in 2 additional projects, one in Hampton Township, Pennsylvania, where we're doing a volunteer fire services assessment. They have 2 volunteer fire stations in the township that we're doing an assessment of. And we most recently were awarded the Burlington, Vermont staffing study. And I had a kickoff meeting with the fire chief there this afternoon to start talking to him about the project and how we would proceed with that. Our project plan pretty much mirrors what Triton would do. Again, we're going to have an orientation and scoping session with whoever the main point of contact would be, whether that's the fire chief, the town manager, or both, to get a better understanding of what you're looking for and laying out the project timeline. We would submit to you a list of data that we would want to collect and go through and analyze for the project. We would talk amongst the team, start on-site preparations and scheduling focus groups. We would do both internal stakeholders and external focus groups. In our proposal, we plan for a 3-day on-site visit. So we get a sense of the community, a tour of the community. We're setting up focus groups with, like I said, fire department members, the officers, the chief, citizens, community leaders, other public safety folks, law enforcement, the select board, the town manager, to have meetings with everyone to get a sense of the issues and where we need to move. We would then certainly start to look at the data. What is the analysis showing us? What are the issues? What are the critical issues that we see in the organization to move forward? We would begin our report preparation. We would prepare a draft report that would be submitted to the town for your review to make corrections and changes, and then we would come back and have a presentation in person of a final report to you of our findings and recommendations. For this project, I would be the team leader. Again, I'm a retired fire chief. I've been in the fire service for probably 40 years. Karen McQuaid is most recently retired. She was the volunteer program manager for a large county organization outside of Washington, D.C. She helped to manage approximately 1,000 fire volunteers in their system as far as recruitment, retention issues, program management. They had about an 80% retention rate of their volunteers in the system with the work that she did. One of the other consultants on the project is Jason DeCremer, again, one of the owners. He's got extensive volunteer recruitment and retention experience. He's been a volunteer chief officer. Both Karen and Jason have taught for the International Association of Fire Chiefs on volunteer recruitment and retention, strategic planning, master planning, those kinds of things. And then we have a GIS analyst, Jared Pritchett, who would be involved in any GIS work with the map layers that you have, data that we collect and get from your CAD system, call data, those kinds of things to do an analysis of your response deployment and how you're tracking. And I'll close with this. For your particular situation, you have issues and needs at the moment, but the best way to predict your future is for you guys to create it, and we want to help you do that. So I'll answer any questions.
All right, thank you. Are there questions on the board? Karen?
No,
Oh,
I'm sorry.
I had a question. Can you describe a project from a community that's about the size and character of Putney that you've done?
As far as population size, Telluride, I know the demographics and the location were different, but Telluride was about 5,000 population there. They certainly had an influx during tourist season, so again, that had to be accounted for in the study. I'll let Jason make comments to some of the prior ones that they did before I came on board as far as size.
But Nitro, West Virginia is a small single station department about 20 miles away from the capital in Charleston. Again, we did a strategic plan, staffing study for them, looked at one of their needs that they wanted us to address was a possible addition of a second station. So we analyzed their call response times, heat mapped where a majority of their calls were coming from, especially in the district that the chief was most interested in for the second station, and did a very thorough analysis of that process. At the end of that, our recommendation, our conclusion was they did not require a second station in that particular part of the city, that their response times, their response were well within national standards. 1710 specifically for them. For you guys in Putney, what we would look at is the 1720 standard, which is the National Fire Protection Association standard for volunteer fire departments. How long it should take to get out, how many personnel should be on scene within a given period of time. That's all those are benchmarked within that standard. The reality is most volunteer fire departments don't meet that, which is why they do studies such as this or apply for SAFER grant funding to help them with recruitment and retention. Another smaller department we did is a combination, Career Volunteers Greenwich in Connecticut. They had 5 or 7 stations. Again, they were also looking at adding an additional 9th station at that time, which ended up not happening. And then Hampton, which is the one we're currently doing right now, is a township department. It's organizationally, its structure is slightly different than a municipal, but they're a small volunteer organization with 2 stations going through a number of changes right now in terms of their call volume increase and the amount of people that they can get to go out to calls.
Okay, thank you. Okay.
I have a question about, you've mentioned grant writing a couple different times, and I'm not clear whether there's some layers built into the proposal that we will have for some grant consultation, or is that a separate service that you provide, separate from what we're contracting you for?
Our grant writing services is just another part of the company, another service that we provide. Certainly, in our analysis of the fire department there, we can certainly provide recommendations regarding grant opportunities that may be available to the town or the fire department that they should look into. But certainly, again, if you wanted us to write a grant proposal for you, we could do that. I just wanted to also, when I was talking about my experience specifically, talk about the fact that, again, in a combination or paid volunteer system, you know, I was involved with getting a significant amount of money to help with the volunteer recruitment and retention plan.
Right, so grant recommendations might come with your services. Not grant writing, but grant recommendations.
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah, great, thank you.
Karen?
So, in your proposal, you mentioned community risk reduction strategies within the town. How involved would that process be? What does it look like?
We would certainly first take a look at the community. What are the risks? What are the major hazards from a demographics, structure standpoint, transportation system, call types between fire and medical or other call types, hazmat, whatever call types, you know, how they shake out, and then make a determination as to what are the greatest risks to the community, to the town. You know, what is the fire department currently doing to respond to those risks or even to mitigate those risks, either from a code enforcement standpoint, fire prevention standpoint. What maybe opportunities exist for the department to branch out into those areas to help mitigate or reduce those risks, or you know what risk may be occurring through town growth, through new building, new construction, those kinds of things, because certainly new construction today is a lot different than old construction as far as fire risk, burn time, and offsetting that with response time for the volunteer company.
Okay, thank you.
What about, and I'm sorry I didn't ask this question of Kurt too, but what about risks of climate change? You know, how do you build that into your study?
Well, certainly that would be part of the whole community risk. If you know, we dealt with it a little bit in Telluride with the watershed there, and because all of their water was from snowpacks and those kinds of things in the mountain. And again, once it melts, it goes into cisterns, and that's their water supply. So we looked at that as far as how they could improve or be more resilient in the future, depending on obviously the variations in snowpack, with developing a more sustainable water supply for the fire department moving forward. So certainly in our analysis of the town, the demographics, the layout of the town, again, there may be flooding issues in certain areas of the town that need to be taken into account, or runoff areas or whatever. We would certainly take a look at that and build those in any recommendations as far as how the fire department can handle them, how they can equip to respond to calls that are as a result of them moving forward.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions on the board? Anybody? So I'm going to go to the room first. Heather?
I'm curious, and the same question we asked of AB Triton later. When we're talking recruitment and retention in small volunteer departments, what is your, maybe not expertise, but what is your familiarity with a roster of under 50 consistently?
I didn't hear the last part.
With a roster of under 50.
Oh, with rosters under 50. Again, I think that we have good experience with that. Again, the last place I worked, when I went to work there, we were a combination department, paid volunteer. I had 5 volunteers in the system. When I left, we were up over 30, and obviously we're still tracking more. So again, I don't think, certainly the size does matter, but I think it matters how you're recruiting and what are your retention issues. You know, what are you doing to get new members? What are you doing to keep new members or to entice them in? Whether you have 50, whether you have 1,000, I think it's pretty much the same dynamic, certainly scalability-wise, but dynamic with how you're getting in people and treating them. And a lot of times, Certainly it has to do with, and I'm not saying this is the case here, but a lot of times it has to do with organization and the culture of the organization as to whether you're able to effectively recruit and to retain volunteers in the system.
And we have a retention first approach. That's what we'll look at first. Karen, who would be on the project, McQuaid, has a master's degree in marketing, and she used that extensively in Loudoun County in Virginia in her role as a recruitment and retention manager there. And she can bring a lot to the table in terms of marketing strategies, target demographics, how you look at different areas within your community for recruiting. If you're able to recruit outside of Putney, which in some cases is frowned upon, but we look at within the town first, the best ways to bring people in. But we're going to look at retention as the first piece. Is there a retention problem? Is there not a retention problem? And then move on from there. And we'll take a very close look at the best ways for long-term sustainability. So our recruitment and retention piece is long-term sustainability. 20, 25 years down the road, not 6 months to a year. We want to put things into place where you have a solid plan moving forward into the future. I come from your fire department. I live it every day. We have 60 people on the roster, and there's 20 to 30 that are consistently at everything. We do a pretty good job of recruitment. We've come up with a lot of nifty new ways to bring people in. But in the volunteer service, it's definitely becoming harder to do that. But as Frank says, it starts with being able to retain first, and then we move into the recruitment piece.
The other thing, again, I think that's beneficial for us being the vendor for you is that with Jason and Karen both having taught for the International Fire Chiefs across the country, they've also learned of what's worked and what's not worked in places across the country, not just in the Northeast or in Vermont. There may be other things that are working out west that can be used in Putney.
Thank you.
Does Kurt want to answer that question?
There's actually two questions now that we didn't think to ask them so far. So I'm going to go to Mr. Fairman first, and then we can circle back around to Kurt to give him a chance to answer those questions as well. So, Mr. Fairman?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I have three brief questions. The first one is, in what academic field is Mr. Clemmer's PhD?
It's public policy and administration, and my dissertation was on recruitment and retention in the volunteer fire service.
Okay.
Thank you. Now, I guess you were online when I spoke with the speaker from the other bidder. What specific results may we expect to see in your final report?
Again, I think you can see a summary of kind of a snapshot of where you are at the moment. Where's the town at? Where's the fire system at the moment? As far as response of membership, response performance in a response time perspective. And then moving forward, what's the future hold for the town as far as development, future call loads, impacts to the volunteer system coming in the future. What's the potential call distribution look like? What are the things that are going to impact the operation of the department, whether that's training requirements or mandates, funding issues, either by the town or within the town, and or again outside the town if they do any self-funding kinds of issues and projects. And then moving forward, what are recommendations regarding how to make the department better, how to have a more sustainable, as Jason said, volunteer-based system. What are the things that can be done to reduce the community risks that the town is seeing? There may be some recommendations regarding the need for some part-time assistance if again there can't be any long-term sustainability brought into the system. There may be issues with equipment, apparatus purchases and funding, and sustainability of the fleet piece, the equipment piece. to the organization. There may be issues or recommendations regarding governance of the fire department, again, how that's structured relative to the positions that the fire chief has in his department, whether that's in training or support services or whatever that may be moving forward.
Mr. Fairman, you have a
Thank
third
you.
one? Okay, go ahead.
Yes. This third and final question is one, I apologize, I forgot to ask it of the previous, in time, I forgot to think of it in time to ask the previous gentleman as well, so I'll leave it up to you as to how to do it, but I would like to ask each gentleman, that is from the two companies, to answer this question. Vermont fire departments are dependent upon mutual aid. Now, you, of course, are studying the town of Putney Fire Department, but how would you propose to address the matter of mutual aid?
That is currently in our proposal. We built that into, we always look at mutual aid and automatic aid agreements that a department may have with other departments, other jurisdictions nearby to either supplement their fire EMS services and to enhance them. We look at, again, what the agreements are, what they say, what type of services are provided, what resources are available from those other jurisdictions, and consider that, not exclusively, but consider them in, what's the available resources available for an incident, particularly a large incident. Can it handle that? To make sure that the town is covered and has the resources available to it that we need. There may be cases where the town is going outside the town limits more frequently than the resources outside the town are coming into the town. There may have to be an adjustment to those agreements in order to balance that out so that the town resources aren't being used further away than where the calls might be inside the town and leave gaps of service there. So certainly we would take a look at all of that, and again, that was in our proposal.
Okay, thank you. Are there other questions on the select board or in the room? Anybody else online? So, Mr. Fairman? Oh,
Madam Chair, if you please, I should like to ask the gentleman representing AP Triton how they would address mutual aid. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. So I have 3 questions now. That's the first one. Why don't we, can you answer that one first, Kurt?
Yes, let's take that one. That's the one I wrote down.
Okay.
And the other presenter covered all of the key points. We also do a fair amount of mapping, including determining resiliency, reliability. It's commonly referred to within the standards as the effective response force modeling, and it's driven by the alarms that you've set up within the fire department itself. And this is truly where the risk modeling comes into place as well, because we'll be taking a look at the effective response force requirements that are stated within the analytics and whether or not that's an effective response force, and whether or not the resources are actually getting out the door. What we have found is we'll have a long list of mutual aid assets, but once we get down to doing the analytics on dispatch, reliability, and dependability, they're not making it. So that results in having to determine how you're going to make up that shortfall, if there is a shortfall. As I've said, we come in with no predetermined recommendations or findings. We take everything from ground up and build it from there. But we look at everything. The mutual aid agreements, those are good documents. Mutual aid and automatic aid. We want to see what's coming out the door automatically, and then what the level of depth is for second and third alarms.
Okay, thank you. So I have 2 other questions, and I'm going to let the people who ask them again, because I didn't write them completely.
Well, now I have more questions.
Okay, but can we can you ask the
Yes, so
original
it
question
was
first?
the volunteer departments under 50. Was the first one, right?
Yes, and then there was something about staff, or was that the same?
That was
thing?
the staffing.
Staff retention, okay.
What was the question?
Right.
how do you address and how do you handle and what is your experience with rosters that are under 50?
Extensive experience with rosters under 50. It is interesting. Many of our experiences parallel the other presenters, including my own. I started as a volunteer fire chief for an all-volunteer organization with 25 and survived for a few years with that. So many of the departments we're dealing with have volunteers, organizations well under 50. The dialogue about recruitment and retention, a lot of that comes out of the interviews, the stakeholder interviews, where we actually get into some in-depth questions with your volunteers. And in the event some of the concerns that have already been mentioned crop up, that goes back to the additional deep dives that we would engage on at no extra cost. So every single one of the people on your project have been matched, and one of the reasons they are matched is dealing with small volunteer agencies, combination agencies, and yes, some of them used to do analytics for a very large agency. So dealing with small organizations all the way down from 25 to 50. I did a project in Golden, Colorado. Their volunteer roster was two-tiered. They had 40 folks. It was actually very effective. So I don't, other than to tell you that we've been there, we've done that. I'm not going to go into our bios because they're lengthy. Once I start adding up the number of years of the team that's on your project, it makes me feel very old. But they have extensive experience.
Okay, thank you. And do you want to ask your question?
Yeah, Kurt, my question was about the climate, projecting for climate change, and just thoughts on that topic.
It's interesting because we're getting a lot of this right now, particularly as we're doing some of the areas where you're seeing climate change start to take effect first. So it starts with the individual who's leading the project in the area of community risk assessment, who also teaches at the National Fire Academy, where they will identify those trends, they will identify the weather trends, etc., and what's going on, and take a look and build that into that analysis. And as we build that into that analysis, then it backs into staffing, deployment modeling, etc. And then what, if anything, in the area of climate change can be done? And again, we start from a baseline of 0. We come in with no predetermined outcomes. But what, if anything, in the area of climate change, as we're noting, can be built into the recommendations in the area of community risk programs, which, again, our CRA person actually teaches that particular class. And that is one of the areas within the RFP that we've been asked to review. So climate change is here. People call it by different things. We work from east to west, west to east, so we are already starting to see it. And we have multiple experts in this area, including foresters and other folks.
Thank you.
Thank you. So I know you have more questions. I think we do want to wrap up the question and answer session soon. So how many questions do you have? Just one? Okay. Why don't you ask it of both of them, ask it of both of them, and then maybe we can move on after that. So, go ahead.
My question is, when we're looking at length of time, are we looking at a year to do this assessment? Are we looking at 5 years, 10 years, 15 or 20?
Who wants to answer that question first?
Well, it's in the proposal.
I'll take it. It's a very, and it is. It's a very common question. So, but I thank you for asking that question because we qualify it on the front side, and I mentioned a little bit about it in my presentation. As the information starts to come in from the custom-made templates that we're going to be providing in the interchanges we're going to be having with your folks, the subject matter experts will immediately start looking at the data and seeing if we need anything else. They start writing their sections right in then. We always have to put in, for the purpose of clarification, a disclaimer, because sometimes it takes our clients a little longer to load data than it takes others. So what the commitment we have is within our proposal, and be honest with you, I don't remember what it is. I just got off of another presentation for a much larger project, but usually our projections are somewhere around 5 minutes from the time we declare the data fully loaded. We can do it shorter. I have had data loaded in 2 to 4 weeks, especially as our team engages with your team in a partnership and we walk through the data together. But in reality, I can't do it any faster than we can get the information to start running the analytics and start our exchange.
Okay, thank you.
I got a question for, I guess, Frank and Jason.
Wait, we haven't gotten an answer from Mission CIT yet.
I'm also wondering if I need to clarify that question.
Okay, so can you answer that question first?
If I understood the question, as far as the time frame, again, there's a time frame for the project and there's a time frame for our recommendations. Certainly, our time frame for the project, we're probably looking at 4 to 5 months for results, and then as far as recommendations, we typically would give 5-year out recommendations. You can go longer, but so much stuff changes either with the economy or demographics or whatever, that anything beyond 5 years is really gets kind of mushy as far as actually coming to fruition.
Okay, thank you. Did you want to clarify?
Yeah, because that was definitely not the question.
Okay.
As far as data is concerned, are we looking back 1 year? Are we looking back 5 years to form that data impression?
For history.
Sorry, go ahead.
Go.
I'm sorry. We typically go 3 years back.
And
So 3 years, we have 2 sets of data. Well, we actually have more than 2 sets, but 2 windows we like to look at. And 3 years is good for CAD and performance. In the projections, such as impact and population, call volume, etc., we prefer to look at 10 years. Coming out of COVID, sometimes I'm also now requesting 4 years of just CAD and NFIRT, or National Fire Accident Reporting System data, because what we've seen is there was a big blip as we do the years that COVID hit, and it really throws off the projections. So 2 data sets, 3 to 4 years on your fire, and your CAD and your fire records management system, and then 10 years of your what we call NFIRS data, the top 5 elements, and we look at the same thing in the area of population because we do trending analysis, and it's usually pretty close.
okay, thank you. Eric, you had a question?
Yeah, for Frank and Jason. As far as your topics you're going to cover, would you get in if you found something or you needed more? Would you go into a deeper dive like Kurt described? Or does it kind of stop right there with if you find what you need?
No, we would certainly go into more detail on the issues. Again, a lot of times, we may start the project after discussions with the fire chief and the town manager, but once we get into the stakeholder sessions, either with the public or internal members, then you sometimes get a whole other set of issues that come up in those focus group meetings that you would look into and to come up either with recommendations or gather more information on to come up with recommendations to address those issues. So no, we're not stopping with, we're going to do A, B, C, and D. If A1 and A2 and A3 come up, we're certainly going to get the necessary data, information, or look at, recommendations or improvements to address those issues as well.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. So I'd like to wrap this part up, if we may, and move on to coming to a decision. So I actually just want to ask Chief Goddard, do you have a preference on either of these?
We could talk about that.
Okay.
But not right now.
Yeah. So how do we want to proceed?
So I just want to thank both EP Triton and Mission CIT for being here this evening. It was very nice to meet you all. And
Thank you for having us.
yeah, a decision will probably be made tonight, and then I'll get a hold of each one of you.
Thank you very much. Have a great evening, everybody. It was a real pleasure to meet you all.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Have a good rest of the evening.
Thank you. Have a good night. Have a good night, everyone. Thank you.
you.
Okay. So, wow. So we don't have to go to executive session for this, do we?
No.
Okay.
No, but it's better that we,
Yeah,
Yeah.
that makes sense.
we can do it
So I
this way.
I'd like to know what people's preferences are. Go ahead.
Can I ask one question? Recommendation. You were gonna follow up with some
No, Eric was.
Eric was
do
going
that.
to, somebody was going to.
Yeah.
Everybody I spoke with was happy on either end.
Yeah.
They weren't really municipal members, they were mostly fire chiefs. But
On both of them?
yes,
Okay.
yep, and
Yeah.
no complaints either way.
Good to hear.
Everybody was looking for something different though, so
Right.
for what they asked for, they were good with it.
They got what they asked for.
Yep.
So I just want to remind the board, the request for proposal that went out.
Yeah.
So the selection criteria is based on cost of service, professional expertise to conduct the analysis, understanding of services to be provided, approach to providing services, satisfaction of clients, quality of proposal. The paragraph reads, proposed costs for services will be the primary factor in the selection process. However, the other functions listed above will also be considered. The town reserves the right to make the selection based upon all factors and may not necessarily choose the lowest cost proposal. Town reserves the right to reject any and all proposals deemed not to be in the best interest of the town.
Okay.
And
I don't
I
have
don't have the
I don't have the
figures
matrix in front of me anymore, so what were
Yeah.
the two?
To who? The matrix?
Yeah.
Yeah.
The money.
So, again, I will stress that Tom and I went through all of the proposals individually. We
Yeah.
came together in a meeting
Yep.
and we discussed the findings. So he did his matrix, I did my matrix. So the bottom line is AP Triton and MIP, or Mission CIP, excuse me, were.
Comparable.
And after this presentation, I feel like either could provide the services we are looking for. I do agree with Mission and CIT, after 5 years of forecasting, it may get muddy. Things are gonna change. So AP Triton, I was strong with them about, they were forecasting 5, 10, 15, 20 years, right? They're both gonna be looking at our town plan, they're gonna be looking at zoning bylaws, they're gonna be looking at ordinances, etc.
Hazard mitigation plan.
Yes. So I'm comfortable. I feel Mission CIT had a strong proposal and presentation.
And what were their numbers?
Their numbers
29,
were,
350 was CIT and
so
AP
Mission
was 41.
CIT was $29,350, and that includes the community risk assessment. AP Triton, $41,666, and if we wanted the community risk assessment, that would be an additional $5,400 for a total of $47,066.
Okay, and Mission CIT had that included in their proposal?
They did.
Okay.
But again, if you're comparing apples to apples, they said too, they might have to do a deeper dive. So does that mean it would be, more money? Possibility. It depends on, what they find, right?
Yeah.
So the study will be only as good as the data that's provided. We all know that. And, I'll let Tom elaborate as well.
I mean, yeah, what's your opinion?
I think we'd be okay with either one. I think based upon, and this didn't weigh into my decision-making at all whatsoever, or had no reflection on anything during reviewing these. But several of us in the area did have occasion to work with the reps from Triton during Brattleboro's evaluation.
Okay.
That was a good experience.
Okay.
I think overall in the big picture, we've got one opportunity to get this right. And I understand the expenses involved. My gut feeling is, because I think out of the gate, there'll be a lot less work needed, or a lot less energy needed to make sure everything is covered with Triton. However, in saying that, with Mission, we'll make sure that nothing is missed, that whether it be department specific, or when it comes to the emergency management side of things, the town plan side of things, zoning, all that, we'll make sure that it's all inclusive, all included in review.
Okay. Mr. Fairman, you had your hand up briefly. You're good now?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I was going to request a clarification, but the clarification has happened. Thank you.
Oh, okay, good. So where's the board sitting with us?
From my point of view, they both seemed like really good operations. I was impressed with both of them. You know, Triton, I had a little bit more confidence just because they've been doing it more. They've got a bigger, the other Mission seems relatively new at the business, and but for, $20,000 difference, if I don't feel like we're compromising, that it's going to be a bad experience, then I would probably go with Mission. If you two in particular, I'm looking, you're my experts, if you think they will do a good job, I think good is good enough. I don't think we have to pay $20,000 more to get the gold standard.
So what's the rest of the board?
I mean, I didn't have direct experience with AP Triton, but I did, hear about them a lot, and I did read their report. So I don't have, that doesn't mean that, I didn't read that one right just now, but that doesn't mean that this one's not comparable. It just means that I have more experience with them. I am a little hesitant to pick a company that doesn't have direct experience in Vermont. But first time for everything. Two, maybe it's better that way. Maybe it's, first eyes, or, no preconceived notions. I don't have enough experience on fire departments to really give a good answer. I'd be tempted to go with the recommendation of the town manager and the fire chief.
I agree with going with the recommendation of the two of you, especially if we have experience with AP Triton to some degree, especially Tom. I think that will make things a lot easier on their end and ours. So. And also Missions is very new, it seems.
Opinion?
Go either way, I guess. They both had.
Do you favor one over the other?
I don't know. It is nice that Missions, they have a rep that's a little closer. If they need to come up and do stuff, less cost for traveling, but I guess we could go either way.
I do have one question, and I'm going to ask Tom the question.
Okay.
because I have no experience either. What I also heard from Mission CIT was the networking piece, right? So they're able to assist with grant funding, and AP Triton, the same.
Yeah, that's the same across the board.
How long does AP Triton stay engaged with their customer? So they write the report, and you may not even know this question. So we have a report, and we all know what happens with some reports, you know, if you don't implement the recommendations, right? Are they gonna stay with us for like 3 months or 6 months, or, you know, I don't expect they're gonna hold our hand, but.
No, but using them as continuing to, after the fact, continuing to use them as a reference as it pertains to their report and their work
Yeah,
forever. And I'm very comfortable saying that based upon their interaction with Williston and Brattleboro.
okay. So the chief did have a long conversation with the Wilson Fire Chief up there,
Okay.
so,
And they have positive experience.
Very, yeah.
Okay. All right.
so.
And again, I'm sorry.
But
Looking at it in terms of, again, getting it right on the first shot and the only shot we're gonna have, and looking at it as an investment to do that, that's where I'm coming from, just again leaning toward Triton.
so it sounded like, go ahead.
No, I just wondered, Karen,
So when I went through the process, my first choice was AP Triton. And I do like Mission CIT, but because AP has the experience in Vermont, that's,
There is something to be said, it's they do have experience, even though their bid is higher, that, you know, they're actually bidding a more accurate price for what it's worth.
and I already said it, so Mission could come into, you know, an area where they're gonna have to do more work. And it may end up being
The same amount.
AP Triton's amount. So,
Okay. So, go ahead.
Along with, or within that, if we're gonna consider Triton, again, as I indicated in my notes on my review, I would certainly recommend investing the extra as well and get the full boat plans that they were talking about. That, not only for that extra review, not only will that help the fire department in the future, but it'll also help the town as far as planning, zoning potentially.
Yeah, hazard mitigation too.
Yeah,
right?
absolutely.
Yeah.
climate change.
Can you give me that final number again? I didn't manage to write it down.
So the final
The
number
very
with
final number.
risk assessment is $47,066.
47,066. That's why I'm having a problem. Okay. All right. So I have a pre-made motion here
okay.
that Karen kindly wrote up. So we're gonna have to make 2 motions because we're gonna expend some money from the reimbursement special fund. So I would entertain a motion to award AP Triton a contract to conduct the Putney Fire Department operations analysis of $47,066. Huh?
You moved.
Wait, yeah, was that a motion or?
I entertained it. So moved.
So moved,
Okay.
yes.
And seconded.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded to award AP Triton a contract to conduct the Putney Fire Department operations analysis in the amount of $47,066. Is there further discussion among the board? Is there comments online? Any comments in the room? Heather?
I just have some questions. I'm kind of curious about why the Vermont experience matters when the Vermont experience has been with much larger full-time departments.
My feeling is that there's a lot of differences in Vermont, New Hampshire, Massachusetts, in the way that our governing structures work, as opposed to further down south in Rhode Island and Connecticut. They don't necessarily have the same structure. And also the whole town meeting. I've been to many town meetings where the main topic of discussion was the fire station, the new fire truck, the new fire chief. So it's a dynamic that I'm not sure other places would understand until they actually got into it. That's my feeling.
Okay. Can I just follow, is that your feeling or your experience?
That's my, I mean, I've lived in New Hampshire and Vermont all my life, so I know that there's a certain dynamic there. So I don't have experience with, I have experience with people coming in and not understanding that piece, not with this particular issue. So I can't say that I have experience with the companies like this, but I do have experience with other companies coming in and trying to work in this dynamic, and there's a learning curve.
To go along with that, if I may, Triton is already very familiar with this specific region. They're familiar with our mutual aid systems. They're familiar with a lot of our departments already, to a limited extent, but they still are familiar. They're familiar with those challenges that exist. When we get well beyond that in this whole analysis, and we start talking about fire prevention code enforcement, we start talking about hazardous materials response and all the state legislation that goes along with that, as well as the legislation that governs the fire department and governs emergency management in the state, the whole EMS picture in the state, the workings with the fire academy, workings with the training division from the state, all of that they've already got a good baseline knowledge of. So when we start to apply that and look at those things, not a lot of energy and time is going to need to be spent on that, where it can be spent on something different.
Yeah. Any other discussion among the board? Any other comments online? Any other comments in the room? Hearing none. All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Okay. So our next motion that I'm going to entertain, which means that somebody else is going to make it or move it, is a motion to expend money for the Putney Fire Department operations analysis from the Public Safety Reimbursement Special Fund.
So moved.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded to expend money for the Putney Fire Department operations analysis from the Public Safety Reimbursement Special Fund. Is there discussion among the board?
I need a little background. Tell me.
I can, so
Here we go.
back in 2006, when Chris Ryan was town manager, the select board instructed Chris to create this fund, okay?
Okay.
It's an account for payment of debt service on the fire station, okay? The money comes in from the school gift payments from the private schools and the emergency service ordinance reimbursements.
Okay.
So the select board does have an emergency service ordinance. It probably should be updated, but it will be looked at in the study.
Is it on the back here? Doesn't exist if it's not on the back here.
So in 2012 at town meeting, there was an article to see if the town will vote to clarify the terms and conditions of individual funds administered by the town as follows. Public Safety Reimbursement Fund. Source of funding, fire service ordinance, billings, and nonprofit gifts, meaning the private schools. Fund use is fire station debt service, balances in excess of debt service for approved public safety expenses. Spending authorization, direct voter approval or select board approval for public safety expenses. So it is in your authority to expend this money. Currently in the public safety reimbursement special fund is $118,455.83, and it is my recommendation that that money for the study be spent out of this account.
Great,
Does that,
thank you
does that help?
for clarifying that.
You're welcome.
Super clear.
Okay, good.
No questions, Peg?
No questions.
I do have comment online, Mr. Fairman.
Madam Chair, I understood you to say that your proposed motion says that you're moving to to spend money. Am I correct?
Expend money from a specific fund.
Yes. I simply offer the observation as a friend of the Select Board. Isn't it customary when spending public funds to either specify, instead of a blank check, to specify an amount or to say not to exceed an amount?
I guess that was implied by the motion before that, but we could amend it. So does somebody want to amend the friendly amendment to expend money not to exceed $47,066?
I'd move a second.
Move second, okay.
I'd move
As long as I've got two voices.
So moved.
All right, so it's been, the motion's been amended to expend money not to exceed $47,066 for the Putney Fire Department Operations Analysis from the Public Safety Reimbursement Special Fund. Is there any other questions, discussion on the board? Any comments in the room? Any comments online? Hearing none. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, we've done those two things. I think that does it for that particular piece. So our next meeting date is July 12th, 2023. That's a regular meeting, right?
Next week.
Next week. This is 4 in a row, people. Thank you. This will be on Town Hall and on Zoom. Can I hear a motion to adjourn?
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
Okay.
Aye.
50 seconds to adjourn.
Aye.
All in favor? Aye. Okay.
Aye.
Very good.
Thank you, everybody.